Hey, Dr. Von Duke here with another quick and dirty special education at TPA portfolio edition. This is on rubric 9, which is question 6 in task 2. Not too hard to answer, but there's some fine points to know. First of all, the guiding question for rubric 9 is how do you connect the focus learner's strength and needs to the learning goal through your instructional choices? Now, you've already answered a lot of rubric 9 in other rubrics. So you gave evidence of your student's need and of a strength in rubric 2. You wrote your learning objectives out in rubric 1. How you supported that need and strength is in rubric 2. All you have to do now is add those pieces together with how your support allowed your student to achieve the learning objective or some part of it. By the way, it's okay if they didn't achieve the learning objective. If your support failed, that's fine too, because the TPA is not about your students succeeding. It's about you enacting all the good parts of teaching, then reflecting and assessing on how it went, and then at the very last commentary, you'll be asked to think about what would you change, what would you do differently. Actually, in rubric 10 next, and in rubric 15. This rubric 9 also relates very well to rubric 10, where you're asked to describe what instructional changes you would make, given that maybe what you tried in 9 didn't work. And in rubric 12, you're asked to provide feedback specific to students' strengths and needs, so you're sort of drawing there again. And then in 15, you're asked to provide the next instructional steps. And so it's a lot more helpful to be able to see the whole slide. So you might start with something that failed in this lesson to begin the next set of instructional steps after your unit that you're doing for the TPA, followed by subsequent steps that you would give beyond this unit. So rubric 9 relates well to your thinking later on in task 3. Now, the way the rubric 9 is organized is you're going to be first giving evidence of the strength or need, again, drawing from rubric 2. You're going to describe how your instructional strategy meets both the strength and the need. So let me pause there a minute. You need an example of a strength and you need an example of a need. You might say that your student has a strength in using manipulatives and they need to use manipulatives to understand this math concept, but now you're using the same example for both a strength and a need. You need to have something very separate for strength and need and talk about them separately in order to score for rubric 9. And that is the difference between a score of 3 or a 4. You also, when you're talking about your instructional strategy, this could be a teaching method that you use. This could be a graphic organizer. This could be materials that you use, the tasks that you assign. Really, any part of what you do to engage your student in the learning can be your strategy. Your strategy can be as simple as saying that I said to the student, I give them feedback, specific feedback on their strengths, and then I discussed with them how it attaches to our next learning. So I presented a connection to the student between previous learning or their strengths and our next tasks. So that would be an instructional strategy to make a linkage there. You then explain how your strategy will help the focus learner achieve the learning goal. This learning goal can be just the learning objective for your lesson. Obviously, it's typically not the whole goal. It could be a subset of the learning objective. It could be a sub-skill underneath that learning objective. And then you just need to say how your support makes sense for how that student is going to learn that goal. So again, supposing your student has a strength in visually strong, right? And you might say, we use markers to highlight parts of the equation, but you didn't really talk about how that helped them to obtain solving that equation. So you need to add that piece where you could say, we use one color for one column and another color for another column, so the student could easily differentiate the ones column from the tens column, so that when we were subtracting, he didn't mix it up or she didn't mix it up. All right, so in brief, what the scores look like when you put them all together is you get a 1 if you mismatch your support to the age and development. So for instance, supposing you provide written materials to a student who's a non-reader, that's going to be highly suspect to the reviewer who's not going to give you a good score in this. Or you superficially match the student's needs. So the student likes to use manipulatives. So you talk about the fact that you put manipulatives there, or even what kind of manipulatives they are, but you don't attach it to the learning goal. So that gets you a 2. When you match the needs to your support to the learning goal, then you have met the need for the score of 3. So to reiterate, you're going to match the needs. You will give evidence for that student's need to get a 3 based on the baseline or whatever you put in rubric 2. You're going to show how you match that to the support you're giving, how that support, so the student has a need for a visual aid, so here's a support that's a visual aid, and then here's how I use this visual aid to support my student's need towards that learning goal. This is specifically how we're using the support in achieving that learning goal. Don't just say that it's there, that's not enough. You have to say how you're using it. And then to get a 4, you need to talk about a strength and a need. And then for a 5, you're teaching a developmentally appropriate self-directed learning strategy, which is very often putting the work into the hands of the student or giving them more agency in what they do. So, all right, so I talked about a non-example there of a visual learning strength, so I think that I don't need to repeat that. Let me just say that I'm Dr. Von Duke. I'm a professor of education. I've been a Pearson portfolio reviewer for special ed for the past 6 years. So I've consulted, I've taught courses on special ed, and I review the portfolios. I understand how ambiguous and stressful it is to go through this, especially when it's tied to your salaries as teachers and you're trying to meet the needs of kids in classrooms at this time in your life. You can see that I have a systematic course and consulting services here if you go to my link tree. And I just want to say a little something about that course. So for $20, I offer you a course that covers all 15 rubrics in detail, slows you down, gives you a video, a PowerPoint, and a draft document. Basically, in 3 lessons, asks you to, tells you what to gather and mark for evidence, drafts it so that the evidence is shaped properly for the question, and targeted for the best rubric score. And then I give you sentence starters and editing checklists and so forth to take that evidence and turn it into your written commentary. And then I also include a section on estimating your score so that you know moving forward how hard you should poke around for evidence or try to manufacture something that's going to get you a score that you need. And this is available on the Teachers Pay Teachers website. Good luck, and I look forward to seeing you around at Rubric Quick and Dirty number 10.